The floodlights lit up the tarmac like a stage, and just as the squadron raised their glasses to a fallen legend, a shadow stepped forward, wearing the exact flight jacket of the woman they'd buried 7 years ago. Silence fell. Faces went pale, because standing there, alive and unshaken, was the pilot known only as Phantom Viper. But if she truly died on that final mission, who just walked out of the dark? Before we dive into this unforgettable return, tell us where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's story might just top this one. Kelsie Paire had learned how to disappear long before she ever vanished. It was a survival skill, sharpened over years of covert flight missions, stealth ops deep in foreign skies, and the kind of training no official logbook ever documented. Blending in, melting out. Leave no trail, leave no noise. She did it better than anyone. They used to joke in Viper Squadron 17 that if the enemy heard Kelsie coming, it was already too late. She earned the call sign Phantom Viper, not because it sounded cool, but because it was true. She could slip through a radar net like smoke, strike a target, and be halfway to the exfil zone before anyone had time to blink. And then one day she was gone. The mission was classified. Most of the squadron never saw the full debrief, just the sanitized version. Over hostile airspace, compromised extraction, missile strike, presumed KIA. No body, no comms, no ejection signal, just gone. For 7 years, the story never changed. Until tonight. Tom Granger didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in dead pilots and tight formations, in whiskey toasts and pain that settled into your bones. He stood straight, hands clasped behind his back, dress uniform crisp even in the fatigue of late hours. His voice was steady, though his jaw tensed every time he said her name. And finally, we raise a glass to Captain Kelsie Paire, Phantom Viper, the best damn pilot I ever flew beside. A ripple of voices followed. To Phantom Viper. The glasses lifted, the silence held, and in the glow of the tarmac lights, a moment of respect hung in the air like fog. Granger stared at her name engraved into the black granite wall. Smooth, clean, final. He remembered the way her voice cracked when she laughed, the way she always adjusted her gloves twice before takeoff. Kelsie wasn't just a legend. She was his mentor once, his rival, his friend. And in that carved line of stone, he could still feel how wrong it all felt. It had never added up. And it never would. He turned away. Staff Sergeant Brian Keller was the first to see her. He'd been moving toward the maintenance hangar, off to retrieve a forgotten set of diagnostic tools before the night shift ended. His boots echoed lightly on the concrete. And then he heard another set of footsteps. Deliberate, slow, not rushed, but purposeful. He stopped, turned toward the sound. The figure emerged like a memory summoned from smoke. Faded flight jacket. The original squadron patch on the sleeve. Not the modern redesign, the old one, sharp lines and worn thread. The woman wore aviator sunglasses even though night had fallen. Her dark blonde hair was longer, streaked now with gray at the edges. But the gait was unmistakable. Ryan froze. Kelsie. She didn't speak. Behind him the crowd was still gathered near the wall, murmuring, beginning to disperse. The soft buzz of a comms unit, the low hum of hangar lights. Keller stepped forward, heart pounding so loud he could feel it in his ears. "You're not," he began. But then she took off the glasses. And just like that, it wasn't a question anymore. The eyes hadn't changed. By the time word reached the others, a small ripple of tension had already spread through the crowd. Murmurs turned into whispers. Whispered names became gasps. One young pilot, Hawkins, let out a nervous laugh, sharp and ill-timed. "Nice try. This some prank." Major Granger heard the tail end of that. He turned. His voice was quiet, low. "Show some respect. That jacket isn't cosplay." Another figure moved forward from the crowd. Sergeant Kelly Monroe, now a comms tech, but once Kelsie's closest friend on base. She stared at the woman standing beneath the floodlights. Her lips parted, but no words came out. It was like watching a ghost wear the skin of someone you used to love. Kelsie tilted her head slightly, the way she used to before calling for final clearance. Her eyes scanned the group, stopping on Granger, then Kelly, then the wall. She walked past them, slowly, until she stood directly in front of her own name. Kelsie Paire, Captain, USAF, KIA, 7 years ago. Breath left her lips, barely audible. "They got the date wrong," she said. No one moved. Granger stepped forward. He felt every eye shift to him as he approached. "What the hell is this?" he asked. Her expression didn't change. "Good to see you too, Major." No, you don't just walk in here, not after 7 years, and drop a line like that. Where the hell have you been?" She met his gaze and didn't blink. "Not where you think." He took one more step, jaw tight. "You were declared dead. I noticed." "The funeral," he stopped, voice hitching. "The goddamn wall." "I didn't ask for any of that," she said, quieter this time. Kelly Monroe finally moved. Her voice trembled. "Then what did you ask for, Kelsie?" A long pause. "I asked them to let me go," she said. Those words hit harder than any confession. Brian Keller watched the exchange like a man who wasn't sure if he was still dreaming. "Let you go," he echoed. "You're saying you left?" "I was told it was the only option." Hawkins, the youngest of the crew, scoffed from the rear. "This is insane. Someone's screwing with us. She's dead. This isn't real." Kelsie turned to him. "What's your name?" He stiffened. "Lieutenant Hawkins." "Well, Lieutenant Hawkins, you weren't there. You don't know what real looks like." Granger stepped between them. "Enough." The squadron fell into stunned silence. Somewhere in the background, a call went out to base command. Colonel Mercer would be on her way now. There'd be questions, procedures, security, checkpoints. But none of that mattered. Yet. Granger's eyes didn't leave hers. "You owe us the truth." Kelsie looked back at the memorial wall, at the polished stone, at the finality etched into it. And then she looked back at them. "You'll get it," she said, voice rough, "but not all at once." Another beat of silence. Then her tone softened. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I came back because I had to, because there's something coming, and you'll need to know what I know." Ranger's breath caught. "Is that a threat?" "No," Kelsie replied. "It's a warning." "I don't." Behind them, the hum of approaching vehicles grew louder. Base security was arriving. So was Colonel Mercer. And still no one moved. Ranger took one final step forward, close enough now to see the exhaustion in her eyes, the faint scars beneath her collar, the tremor in her fingers as she flexed them once, a pilot's habit. He didn't say her name again. He just whispered, "God help us." And Kelsie Paire, still standing in her own shadow, gave a faint smile. "You're gonna need it." Tom Granger had been in the Air Force long enough to stop believing in fairy tales, but even he couldn't shake the image burned into his memory. Kelsie Paire, standing beneath the hangar lights like she'd never left, like she hadn't been swallowed whole by a war no one would speak of. 7 years of silence undone in a few staggering minutes. The colonel arrived fast. Diane Mercer didn't run, but her stride was clipped, precise, the kind of woman who didn't raise her voice unless she expected immediate obedience. She was flanked by 2 MPs, and her sharp eyes didn't miss a thing as she approached the growing circle on the tarmac. "Is this a joke?" she asked without preamble. Kelsie didn't flinch. "Good evening, Colonel." Mercer stared. Captain Paire is dead." "Apparently not," Kelsie replied, deadpan. Granger stepped in, still trying to find balance in the chaos. "Colonel, I think she's telling the truth." Mercer turned her head sharply. "You think? You think?" Her eyes dropped to the worn flight jacket Kelsie wore, same patch, same serial stitch, same burn mark on the shoulder from a failed flare drop back in 2016. Her gaze hardened. "Get her inside, now." They brought her in through the secondary wing of the base, not in cuffs, but close. The MPs stayed close behind, twitchy fingers near triggers, unsure if they were escorting a ghost, a threat, or both. Kelsie walked calmly, her boots echoing down the long corridor. Every step seemed heavier than the last. They led her to an empty debriefing room. Metal table, bolted chairs, one camera blinking quietly in the corner. She sat down without needing to be told. Granger followed. Mercer stood in the doorway a moment longer, her mouth a thin line, before finally stepping inside. "Let's get this straight," Mercer began. "You're going to explain what happened to you. Everything. No omissions, no games. You're on active federal property under extraordinary suspicion. This conversation will be recorded. And if you lie, even once, I will have you court-martialed, ghost or not." Kelsie leaned forward slowly. "You might want to sit down, Colonel." Mercer didn't move. "Start talking." So she did. But not all at once. Kelsie began where everything had ended. Operation Deep Storm. A flight mission so redacted that even most of Viper Squadron 17 didn't know the coordinates. She'd been scrambled with less than 10 minutes' notice. No wingman, no explanation. A sealed brief delivered to her hand with a classified override. A black flight path. Hostile airspace. Objective unclear. She flew the mission anyway. "I didn't see the missile," she said quietly, eyes locked on the table. "Just the shockwave. Hit the Raptor mid-wing, threw me into a spin, no eject." Granger sat forward. "But the wreckage was staged," she interrupted. "The wreckage was planted. The whole crash site was fabricated." Mercer narrowed her eyes. "Why?" Kelsie looked up. "Because they needed me to vanish." "What are you saying?" Granger asked. "The Air Force did this?" "No," she said. "Someone else." She wouldn't say the name, not yet. Only that after the crash she woke up in a facility far off the map. Desert terrain, unflagged uniforms, no insignias. The people there didn't call her captain or ma'am. They called her asset. She spent years inside that place. Not a prisoner in the traditional sense, but watched, tested, flown on missions no one would ever speak about. Always alone. No comms, no intel briefings, just orders in envelopes and coordinates in red. "I became what they wanted," she said. "A ghost. The one they could call when no one else could fly." Mercer's tone darkened. "And you never tried to escape?" Kelsie gave a hollow smile. "I wasn't supposed to want to." The room was silent. Granger rubbed a hand across his mouth. "Why now? Why come back?" Kelsie didn't answer right away. Her fingers touched the edge of her flight jacket as if grounding herself. Then she spoke softly. "Because they're done with me. And I know things now. Things I wasn't supposed to survive long enough to remember." Mercer's voice dropped. "You expect us to take your word for this?" "No," Kelsie said. "I expect you to verify." She reached slowly into her jacket. Every MP in the room stiffened and pulled out a small black data drive. She placed it gently on the table and slid it toward Mercer. Encrypted logs, coordinates, flight manifests, communications routed through ghost channels. You'll need triple clearance, but it's all there. Mercer picked it up, barely. "You realize," she said carefully, "that if this is authentic, you're not just a returning soldier. You're a witness. Maybe a target." Kelsie nodded once. "I already am." They left her in holding that night. Not a cell, but not far from one. She didn't complain, didn't ask for food or water, just sat on the cot, eyes closed, as if she'd been waiting for this moment longer than anyone could understand. Granger stayed behind with Mercer as the security doors clicked shut. "She's telling the truth," he said. "You don't know that." "I know that look. That's the same look she had before every blackout sortie. You can't fake that kind of quiet." Mercer didn't answer. She stared down the hallway, arms folded. "If this is real," she finally said, "it's bigger than her." Granger's voice dropped. "You think she's bait?" "I think," Mercer said coldly, "that something followed her home." Across the base, news had already begun to spread. Pilots whispered in break rooms, fingers pointed at the dark hangars, where ground crews said they saw her stepping out like a ghost wearing skin. Kelly Monroe sat in the communications hub, staring at a long-expired call sign blinking red on her terminal. PV Phantom Viper. She had identified, and she wept. Not out of fear, not out of confusion, but from a long, aching hope that maybe, just maybe, the dead didn't stay dead forever. In the barracks, Lieutenant Hawkins stared at the wall, jaw clenched. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered to himself. "People don't just walk out of the grave." But somewhere deep down, in that tiny crack between doubt and fear, even he couldn't help but wonder, what if they do? And what if they come back with unfinished business? Colonel Mercer stared at the monitor with the drive Kelsie had handed over connected to it. No prompts, no passwords, just layers upon layers of encrypted walls so dense her first thought was that it had to be some kind of decoy, until the first firewall cracked open like a shell. "Jesus," whispered the tech beside her. It was real. Deep system logs, flight coordinates that didn't trace to any known military theater, communication bursts from shadow servers. No call signs, no country flags, no chain of command. Just stripped mission briefs, intercepts, ghost runs, weapons deliveries, and names Mercer had only seen whispered in joint intelligence updates. Black sites, shell contractors, units that supposedly didn't exist. Mercer crossed her arms. "Everything we need to bury her, or blow a hole through someone's damn secret empire." The tech swallowed and nodded. "Should I call DC?" Mercer didn't answer, because part of her already knew. If this drive reached the wrong people, Kelsie Paire wouldn't just be silenced. She'd be erased, this time for good. Kelsie, meanwhile, sat alone in the debriefing room, legs crossed, jacket still zipped tight like armor. She hadn't asked for a lawyer. She hadn't asked for anyone, really, but the room no longer unsettled her. Small, cold, monitored. This was nothing new. Granger entered slowly. He didn't speak right away. He just sat down across from her and watched her with the kind of look a man wears when everything he's ever known is shifting beneath his boots. "You were the best of us," he finally said. "You still are, probably." She didn't move. "And you let us believe you were dead for 7 years." "I didn't let you believe anything," she replied. "They did that. You could have reached out, sent a signal. Anything." "I couldn't." Granger leaned in. "Why not?" "Because I didn't know who was listening." The silence between them stretched, long and tight. It wasn't anger in Granger's voice, not exactly. It was betrayal, buried beneath the surface, too complicated to name. "I flew missions after you vanished," he said. "Carried your name on my patch, trained the new kids with your maneuvers. Every year I stood in front of that wall and gave the speech." His voice cracked, just slightly. "And now you're sitting here like none of it happened." Kelsie's eyes didn't waver. "It happened, Tom. It all happened, just not the way you think." He hesitated. "Then help me understand." Kelsie closed her eyes for a long beat. Then she finally spoke. They came to me right after the crash, pulled me out before the rescue team even got close. I was unconscious. When I woke up, I was in a facility somewhere in the Nevada desert. No insignias, no doctors with names, just people in white who called me Subject V. They told me I'd been declared dead. Said I had a choice, stay dead or become something more useful. Useful? Granger's voice was tight. They had a program. Off books, deep black. They were building a unit made of ghosts. People who didn't exist anymore, who could be sent places the U.S. couldn't afford to be seen. We weren't prisoners. We were assets. Jesus, he muttered. And you stayed? I survived. Granger leaned back, his face pale. Why come back now? Kelsie hesitated. Because the program's over. But the missions never stopped. They've started bringing in contractors, mercs, people without the training, without the code, and someone inside that machine has turned it into something else. Something wrong. There are files in that drive that connect ghost flights to domestic surveillance, political targeting, rogue operations inside U.S. borders. You saw this. I flew some of it, she said. I didn't know what I was part of until it was too late. Granger sat back, stunned. The weight of it sat in his chest like concrete. It was one thing to suspect shadow missions. It was another to hear a friend tell you she'd become a weapon aimed by invisible hands. You trust Mercer? Kelsie asked. He nodded. She's old school, rigid as hell but honest. She'll be a target the second she starts asking questions. She's already started. They both looked up as the door opened again. Mercer stepped in, slow, holding the drive in one hand. Her face was unreadable. You have no idea what you've just thrown in our laps, she said. I do, Kelsie replied. Mercer tapped the drive. We're going to need verification, testimony, and protection. Kelsie raised an eyebrow. You still have a secure hangar on the west side? Mercer blinked. Yeah. Then I have something to show you. She was escorted out under armed watch, though the guards now carried less tension in their shoulders. Whispers trailed in the hallways. Someone had passed around her old flight footage, grainy helmet cam clips of the woman who could dive an F-22 through radar grids and come out clean. The footage didn't match the worn lines on her face now, the stiffness in her gait. But it didn't matter. The legend had returned. They took her to Hangar 3. Inside, under a top, sat the impossible. An aircraft no one had clearance for. Sleek, compact, not military issue, not entirely foreign. Something between a Raptor and a drone. Fast, silent, lethal. I stole it, Kelsie said simply, running a hand along the fuselage. Walked right out of their base and flew it here over 2 time zones. No one knew until I landed. Mercer's jaw clenched. Why? Because they'll be looking for it, not me. Granger walked a slow circle around the aircraft. This is tech I've never seen before. Kelsie nodded. You won't find it in any manual. Mercer folded her arms. You're telling me someone built this? Outside of any official program? Someone who has a lot more money than loyalty, Kelsie replied. The colonel turned to her. And now they want it back. They'll come, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Then we lock down this hangar, shut down all base access, and call in a top clearance task force. Kelsie looked at her. If you do that, you won't make it through the night. Granger narrowed his eyes. Then what do we do? Kelsie looked up at the dark rafters, at the rows of overhead lights humming softly. Her voice was calm, even steady. We let them think I'm still a ghost. Outside, the wind shifted just enough to rattle the flags near the tarmac. Inside the hangar, a group of men and women, friends, commanders, believers, and skeptics, stood around the kind of secret that never stayed quiet for long. And somewhere far beyond the fences of Redstone Air Force Base, a satellite pinged, a screen lit up, and a nameless voice said quietly, "He's back." Colonel Mercer had seen enough in her career to know when a truth was too dangerous to handle directly. She didn't trust the Pentagon. She barely trusted the Defense Intelligence Agency. And she sure as hell didn't trust that this aircraft, had slipped through every level of oversight, landing quietly in her hangar like a ghost bringing bad omens. So she did what few officers in her position would have done. She shut everything down. No comms out, no data uplink, no official report. The aircraft was logged under a weather surveillance retrofit, and the hangar was sealed under a Level 4 maintenance order, effectively locking it behind layers of meaningless jargon. Only 3 people had physical access now: Mercer, Granger, and Kelsie Paire. Mercer stared at the hangar manifest, chewing the inside of her cheek. "You just dropped a live grenade in the middle of my command," she muttered. Granger across the table exhaled. "She didn't have a choice, and neither do we." "Someone always has a choice," Mercer snapped. "They just don't always like the options." Granger glanced through the two-way glass into the room beyond. Kelsie stood near the aircraft, running a slow hand across the fuselage again, her expression unreadable. He remembered that same look before deep strike missions. A mix of calm and regret, like she already knew not everyone would come back. Mercer followed his gaze. "She's not the same. No one is after 7 years in a cage. Don't romanticize it, Major. You're not her second coming. You're her witness." Granger clenched his jaw, but didn't argue. He knew Mercer was right. He also knew they were already in too deep. The data on that drive didn't just implicate Black Ops. It pulled a thread that could unravel entire defense programs. And someone out there would do anything to stop that thread from pulling further. Inside the hangar, Kelsie heard the low groan of the outer blast doors opening. Only one other person had that override access. Captain David Rourke stepped inside, his uniform sharp, eyes sharper. Intel man. Lean build, salt and pepper hair at the temples. Kelsie hadn't seen him in almost a decade, not since an early joint op in northern Syria. He stopped a few feet from her. Didn't expect the ghost to be so solid. Didn't expect Intel to still be talking in riddles, she shot back. He didn't smile, but his posture relaxed a little. "You've caused quite a mess. You here to clean it up or make it worse? It depends on whether you're still playing for the home team." Kelsie turned her back to him and reached for a small hatch on the underside of the aircraft. She popped it open, revealing a storage bay. Inside, a second encrypted drive, thicker, shielded. She tossed it to him. "I kept the dirty version off the base systems. That's your copy." Rourke caught it without blinking. "You're trusting me with this?" "No," she said. "I'm trusting Mercer. You just happened to be in the room." He turned the drive over in his hands. "This ties back to the Cobalt Ring." Kelsie's eyes flicked to his face. "So you do know." Rourke nodded. "More than I should, less than I want to." "Then you know what's coming. I know they won't let you live long if this goes public." She stepped back from the aircraft and folded her arms. "Then we don't go public. Not yet." Rourke raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting what? A private war?" Kelsie didn't answer, not directly. She simply said, "They trained me to fly through walls no one else could see, and now I know where those walls lead." Outside the hangar, Kelly Monroe stood at the comm station, watching the encrypted feed between the rooms. She still didn't know how to feel. Grief hadn't turned off. Relief hadn't fully clicked on. She'd cried after seeing Kelsie. Then she'd gotten angry, then confused, and now she was mostly just numb. Hawkins entered the room behind her, holding 2 coffees. He set one beside her. "She's not who I thought she'd be," he muttered. "You thought she'd be a ghost story." "I thought she'd be a myth," he said. "Something they made up to scare us into respecting protocol. I didn't think she'd have scars." Kelly didn't look at him. "All legends do." In the command office, Mercer tapped her stylus against the desk, then finally spoke. "We can't sit on this." Ranger nodded. "But if we send it up the chain, it disappears." "Or we do," she added. They both looked at the wall where the flight logs now glowed. Deep ops into Eastern Europe, surveillance missions over U.S. cities, all flagged as unconfirmed operational assets. Mercer leaned forward. "We pull it apart ourselves. Quietly. We verify one mission at a time. If even one of those logs is real, we go to the press with it. And if it's all real," she looked at him flatly, "then we burn the whole tree." At night, Kelsie sat alone in a temporary bunk, the lights dimmed, her boots off. Her hands rested on her knees, steady but cold. She had lived inside missions for so long she wasn't sure what the in-between was supposed to feel like anymore. But something in her chest, deep and small, stirred. For the first time in years, she wasn't under a handler's eye. She wasn't flying solo. She wasn't invisible. Her hand slid beneath the mattress and retrieved a small item. A set of old dog tags. Not hers. Another pilot. Someone from the program who hadn't made it out. She rubbed the letters gently, then tucked them back. A knock on the door pulled her from the moment. Ranger stepped in. No uniform jacket, just a t-shirt and the weight of memory on his face. He didn't speak, just leaned against the wall. After a long pause, he said, "We've got work to do." She nodded. He started to leave, then stopped. "There's something you should know." She looked up. "You were never just a ghost story," he said. "After you disappeared, they rewrote your file, deleted half your service log, but the squadron, we kept telling your story. Every class of new pilots, every simulation run. You were the standard, the bar no one could clear." Kelsie didn't answer, but her eyes softened. "I just thought you should hear it," he said, and stepped back out into the hallway. Kelsie sat still for a moment longer, then finally let herself breathe. She wasn't done fighting. But for the first time in years, she wasn't fighting alone. No one was supposed to be flying that morning. The runways were grounded for a scheduled systems recalibration, and the entire squadron had been briefed. No engines, no drills, no movement beyond perimeter patrols. But just before sunrise, the distinct low growl of engines broke the silence. Not the roar of a standard F-22. This sound was quieter, deeper, like a machine trying to whisper through its own thunder. Lieutenant Hawkins shot up from his bunk, boots half-laced, heart pounding. By the time he sprinted outside, the dark silhouette of an aircraft cut across the pink-tinged morning sky. It banked hard left, dipped beneath the tree line, then arched back into view. Perfect form, clean angles, like a ghost dancing through clouds. "What the hell?" he whispered. Next to him, 2 other pilots were watching too, jaws slack. "Is that—" one began. "It's her," Hawkins said before the words could finish forming. Down at the edge of the main runway, Kelsie Paire sat in the Stolen Bird, the prototype she'd flown across state lines under radio silence. Its control layout was alien to most pilots, but to her, it was second nature. The HUD responded to eye movement, throttled by biometric sensors, and still, she flew it like it had always been hers. Inside the tower, Colonel Mercer stared at the display as the radar traced Kelsie's impossible maneuvers. "He's testing the limits," said the tech beside her. "No," Mercer replied. She's proving something. Down below, Granger and Rourke arrived at the observation deck, both staring in disbelief. "She shouldn't be flying," Rourke muttered. "That aircraft isn't stable on our protocols." "It is on hers," Granger said. They watched as Kelsie pulled into a stall, dropped nose down into a steep descent, then yanked into a roll just 20 feet off the tarmac, a move no simulator would ever permit. Then, just as quickly, she slowed, leveled, and guided the craft onto the runway, so smooth it barely kissed the asphalt. No drag, no bounce, just silence, as if even gravity had agreed to wait for her. When she exited the cockpit, Kelsie didn't acknowledge the small crowd that had gathered. Her flight suit was zipped high, helmet in hand, expression unreadable. But her eyes, those sharp, storm-colored eyes, locked on Hawkins. "Take a good look, Lieutenant," she said, "because flight manuals won't teach you what I just did." Hawkins opened his mouth, then shut it. He'd mocked the stories, scoffed at the legends, but nothing he'd seen in 100 flight hours could explain what she'd just pulled off. Granger approached, voice low. "You're not helping your case." "I'm not here for a case," she said. "I'm here for trust." Mercer arrived seconds later, her gaze tight. "You're lucky I didn't scramble interceptors." "You wouldn't have caught me," Kelsie said flatly. Mercer exhaled hard. "Next time, ask before making the entire base think they've been invaded."
"No next time. That was it,"
Kelsie said. They needed to see. The ones watching from the fences, the cocky rookies, the doubters, they needed to know, "I didn't forget how to fly." Mercer's tone softened, barely. "That wasn't flying. That was a message." "Exactly." They stood in silence for a beat. Then Mercer nodded toward the tower. Rourke made progress with the logs. "Come inside." Inside the operations room, the air was thick with tension. The decryption had peeled back more layers of the cobalt ring, the covert operation hidden beneath layers of legitimate intel. It wasn't just surveillance. It was acquisition, testing, domestic manipulation. Some of the black flights had targeted American cities. Others had been surveillance runs over military bases like Redstone. They were watching their own people, Rourke said, scrolling through manifests, tracking personnel movement, vetting command structures, and removing liabilities. Granger leaned in. "Assassinations?" "Not directly," Rourke said. "But if a convoy happened to take a different road after someone made a phone call, it would be hard to call it coincidence." Kelsie stared at the screen. "And the ones who resisted?" Rourke clicked again. A list popped up. Names, mostly redacted. But one name wasn't. Colonel Diane Mercer. Everyone froze. Mercer blinked. "They flagged me?" Rourke nodded. 3 months ago. High integrity score. Anti-contractor sentiment. Deemed potential obstruction to operational expansion. Kelsie stepped closer. "That's why I came here." "They knew I'd be trouble," Mercer said. "No," Kelsie replied. "They knew we would be." Rourke added, "There's more. Communications suggest they plan to scrub the site, relocate all assets. They're already moving." "Which means someone's coming here," Mercer said. "To finish the job," Kelsie finished. Later that day, Mercer called a closed meeting, just the inner circle, Granger, Rourke, Kelsie, and Kelly Monroe. Kelly had barely spoken since Kelsie's return. She sat now with arms folded tightly, eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. "Should have sent a signal," she said finally. "Something, anything." "I couldn't," Kelsie said. "I would have come for you." Silence. Then Kelly stood across the room and wrapped her arms around Kelsie in a hug so tight, so sudden it knocked the wind from her chest. For the first time since she returned, Kelsie allowed herself to feel something. And Ranger cleared his throat. We have to assume the base is compromised. Rourke nodded. We don't know who's listening or who's been turned. Mercer's jaw tightened. Then we prep a counter-op. Kelsie's eyes flicked up. I'll lead it. You're not even reinstated, Mercer said. Then reinstate me. You can't just walk back into this uniform. I never walked out of it, Kelsie replied. I flew with it stitched into my skin, and I'm not asking for ceremony, Colonel. I'm asking for orders. Mercer stared at her, the room dead quiet. Then, slowly, she stood and walked to the locker in the corner of her office. She entered a code. The door popped open. Inside was a sealed package wrapped in black cloth. She turned, handed it to Kelsie. Then wear it right. Kelsie unwrapped it slowly. Inside was her original flight patch, the one they retired after she vanished. Phantom Viper. The stitching hadn't aged, but she had. She pinned it back on her flight suit without a word. Not a comeback. Not redemption. A reminder. Ghosts didn't land planes, but legends? They returned with fire. The mission brief was verbal. No paper trail, no digital footprint, no trace. Kelsie stood before them. Granger, Monroe, Rourke, Hawkins, and 2 trusted ground crewmen who'd proven loyal over the years. They were gathered in the old war room, a relic of the Cold War buried beneath the airbase, shielded from signals and eyes. The air was thick with dust and silence, the only sound coming from the faint hum of lights overhead. You'll have 10 minutes in the airspace before they intercept, Kelsie said, pointing at the grainy satellite map. We're going dark. No transponders, no comms. This isn't a reconnaissance run. It's exposure. Granger crossed his arms. You sure this is the way? They won't stop unless we make them afraid to chase, she answered. We put eyes on their next staging area. We confirm the transfer. Then we get out. Rourke tapped a marked section on the map, an unlisted airstrip in rural Arizona. That's where they're moving the next asset, if it's what we think it is. It's not just a plane. It's a prototype weapons system they've been building off-grid. And you're going to fly into that? Hawkins asked. His tone wasn't skeptical anymore, it was concern. Kelsie glanced at him. I already have. No one argued further. Later that night, while the rest of the base turned in, Kelsie suited up in the old hangar. Her new patch, Phantom Viper, was stitched over her chest once more. The suit felt both foreign and familiar, like stepping back into a life you once owned, only to find it slightly smaller around the ribs. Kelly Monroe helped her with the shoulder straps, fingers trembling slightly. You scared? She asked. Kelsie shrugged. Of what? Dying again? Kelly didn't smile. You come back this time? She said quietly. Kelsie nodded. You'll know if I don't. Granger was already on the tarmac, waiting beside the aircraft. He gave her a look that held more weight than words. If this goes bad, then burn the files, she said. No, he replied. Then we go get you. She stopped in front of him, hesitated, then held out her hand. He shook it. You were always the better one, he muttered. I just flew faster, she replied. Then she turned and climbed into the cockpit. The hangar doors opened slowly, flooding the room with moonlight. The prototype aircraft shimmered under the glow like some cold-blooded creature. Quiet, vicious, ready. The engines purred to life, then growled as the plane rolled forward and launched into the night, silent as a secret. From the tower, Mercer watched with her arms folded. She's baiting them, she said to Rourke. No, he replied. She's hunting them. 30 minutes later, Kelsie flew over the desert, altitude 30,000 feet, airspeed steady. The sky was clear. No clouds, no interference, just endless dark above and an ocean of stars. She dropped the aircraft lower, radar off, instruments in manual. The world shrunk into her gloved hands. She could feel them long before she saw them. 2 bogies, closing fast. No commercial signatures, no military callouts, just raw, silent intercepts, moving like wolves on a scent. Her HUD blinked. Shadow signatures. They were here. She banked hard right, rolled under them, and fired a flare. Not a missile, not a threat, just light. Enough to say, "I see you." The interceptors pulled back. One tried to circle behind her. Kelsie smiled. She cut the engines mid-dive, rolled under the second craft, re-engaged power, and surged forward in a clean escape vector, but not before catching a glimpse of the tail markings. No flag, just a ring, a cobalt ring. She had what she needed. The next few minutes were pure fire. Dogfighting without weapons, just positioning and misdirection, like old-school combat filtered through 21st century tech. She pulled the stolen bird into a flat spin, dropped countermeasures, then throttled into the stratosphere with both interceptors left behind, too heavy to follow. Altitude 35,000 feet. Silence again. Then her comms cracked to life. A whisper, coded. The comm at V returned to origin. Her blood turned cold. No name. No location. Just the same voice she'd heard in the facility years ago, the one that gave orders behind mirrored glass. She didn't answer. Instead, she toggled the encrypted channel to broadcast. "This is Captain Kelsie Paire of the United States Air Force," she said clearly, voice cutting through the dark. "You're operating black hardware over domestic territory without military sanction. You are now exposed. Turn back." Silence. Then another whisper. "You should have stayed dead." Kelsie killed the comms. End of. She punched the throttle into overdrive, descending back toward friendly airspace. Radar silent, heart pounding. She knew now. She'd seen them, provoked them, pulled their mark. They'd tried to scare her. But the game was no longer in the shadows. She landed back at Redstone in the early hours, just as dawn broke over the hills. The air was cold. Dew clung to the nose of the plane as the hangar doors shut behind her. Mercer and Granger waited inside, flanked by Kelly and Rourke. "Well?" Granger asked. Kelsie pulled off her helmet. 2 interceptors, unmarked, confirmed visual on the ring. Rourke exhaled. "Then it's real." "They followed me," she added. "Tried to box me in." Mercer stepped forward. "Did you make contact?" "I told them I wasn't afraid." "And were you?" Kelly asked. Kelsie paused, then said, "Only of what happens if we do nothing." That morning, the base remained in lockdown. But something had shifted. Kelsie wasn't just a returned soldier anymore. She was a threat to someone. Someone powerful. She watched the sun rise from the roof of the old comms tower, arms folded, breath steaming in the air. Granger joined her, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. He handed her one. "Did you ever imagine this?" he asked. "Not like this," she said, "but I always knew it wouldn't be over." "Tomorrow?" We hit back. He nodded, then pointed at the horizon. "Look," he said. She turned and smiled, because rising into the sky, drawn by the morning light, were 2 F-22s flying in formation. Viper Squadron. Her squadron. Back in the sky. She watched them bank toward the sun, and knew she wasn't flying alone anymore. The plan wasn't complicated. That's what made it dangerous. No back channels, no slow leaks, no bureaucratic foot-dragging. Just one high-altitude flight, one signal burst, and one unignorable truth. Colonel Mercer stood at the command table with Granger, Rourke, Monroe, Hawkins, and Kelsie. The hangar behind them hummed with quiet energy. Final preps, final checks, and for some of them, final chances. "This is it," Mercer said. We send the evidence directly to every major news outlet with live verification from the flight. If even one reporter sees that aircraft and receives the logs, we blow the cover on Cobalt Ring. They'll try to intercept the stream, Rourke warned. Scramble the transmission, discredit it. Kelsie nodded. That's why I'll be in the sky. Signal strength is stronger airborne, less likely to jam. And if they come for you again? Hawkins asked. Then they get one last reminder, she said, that I'm not flying alone. The mission clock started ticking. Kelsie suited up once more, each strap a quiet vow. Her flight suit, now bearing the old Phantom Viper patch with fresh stitching, fit like armor. Not made to protect her from bullets or flame, but from memory, from the weight of what had happened and the hope of what was finally coming. In the control tower, Monroe adjusted the frequency dials manually, bypassing standard protocols. Rourke stood over her shoulder, rechecking the encryption lines. The moment Kelsie cleared 20,000 feet, the signal would trigger. A cascade burst to over 60 independent newsrooms, activist outlets, watchdogs, and military oversight agencies. There would be no time to recall it, no chance to bury it. They had one shot. The runway lights flared as the hangar doors pulled open. Granger stood at the base of the tower, headset clutched tight. "Fish is cleared," he said. "All eyes up." The engines of the stolen aircraft came to life again, that low, unholy hum that didn't belong to any flag. It whispered of power, of silence turned into violence, of things done in the name of order. Kelsie gripped the throttle and whispered to herself, "One more mission." Then she lifted off. The climb was smooth. At 8,000 feet, she engaged the burst buffer. At 15,000, the logs decrypted. At 22,000, the first drone appeared. No call sign, no military clearance, just a long-winged predator cutting through the dawn air with a camera eye and a payload slung beneath its belly. "They found me," she said, into the encrypted mic. Back on the ground, Monroe's eyes went wide. "They're ahead of schedule. That drone wasn't on any forecast." "They're watching," Granger muttered. "They always were." Rourke leaned over the terminal. "We can't recall the burst now. We have to protect the stream." More drones emerged on Kelsie's HUD. 3, then 5. Kelsie didn't flinch. "Let them watch," she said. "They're about to see everything." Then, suddenly, the signal flashed green. Light. The data burst left her aircraft in a clean wave, ricocheting off secure satellites, bounced through civilian systems, Google's DNS, Amazon's backups, independent comms relays that no defense contractor had control over. The file reached its destinations: newsrooms, journalists, investigators, independent veterans groups, military watchdogs. The entire shadow of the Cobalt Ring was now exposed. Ops, names, financials, domestic spying, assassination attempts, foreign deals, and the intentional disappearance of soldiers deemed too conscious to obey. And then the real surprise came. From the north, 2 aircraft surged toward Kelsie's altitude, fast, armed, and flying without any IFF. Enemy signatures. Granger's voice came through. "Phantom, you've got company." "I see them." "Kelsie, abort." "It's done. We've won. Get out of the air." But Kelsie didn't descend. "Not yet. I've run from these bastards for 7 years, she said. "I'm not ending this behind a desk." Below, Mercer stepped into the tower, eyes fixed on the screen. "Call up every bird we have. Scramble Viper 17. "You can't authorize that." "I just did." And then the sky cracked. From the east, 3 F-22s from Viper Squadron surged into view. Pilots who had trained under Kelsie's old programs. Men and women who had memorized her maneuvers like scripture. Who had called her a ghost, a myth, and now flew beside her. "Viper Lead, this is Ghost 1, Kelsie said, voice steady. "Ghost 1, We have you. Targets acquired. Let's show them what we remember. The sky turned to war. The two rogue aircraft tried to press in, boxing Kelsie high and right. But the squadron was faster, tighter. They flew like they were inside her head, anticipating her moves before she made them. One dropped low to cover her blind spot. The other pulled vertical to cut the angle of attack. Kelsie rolled left, baited a lock-on, and fled mid-dive. The rogue broke formation. Seconds later, one of the interceptors peeled off completely. The other tried to follow Kelsie again, but Granger, flying in from the west, banked high and forced it off course with a clean shoulder maneuver. It was over in minutes. No missiles, no shots fired. Just presence and unity. When Kelsie finally descended back toward Redstone, trailing a full Viper formation, the tower erupted in cheers. Mercer didn't smile, but her eyes betrayed her. "You'll remember," she said. Rourke folded his arms. "You gave them their legend back." Kelsie landed clean. The wheels kissed the runway, and the aircraft rolled to a stop beneath the rising sun. When she stepped out of the cockpit, the entire base seemed to breathe. Waiting near the hangar were every surviving member of Viper 17, ground crew, junior cadets, and a dozen support staff who had watched her name etched on a wall for too many years. Now they watched her walk among them again. Granger stepped forward and held out a box. Inside was a polished, fresh nameplate. Not memorial black, but active duty silver. Captain Kelsie Paire, Phantom Viper. "This time," he said, "we get it right." She looked at him, then at the people behind him, her people, and nodded.
No speech, no salute, just a quiet, earned smile. Later, under a warm sky and quiet banners, she stood beside Kelly Monroe, watching the new cadets run flight drills. Clean movements, crisp lines, learning from scratch like they all once had. So Kelly handed her a soda. "What now?" Kelsie took a sip. "Now I rest." "Really?" Kelsie laughed. "For about a week." Then she looked back at the airfield. After that, we built something better. And for the first time in years, she wasn't just breathing, she was home.